Hi Year 2, welcome to your history lesson this week. So we're carrying on with our learning all about explorers. So I'm going to show you a picture now, and I'd like you to have a really close look at this picture and have a think. Where do you think this picture was taken? What is this a picture of? Tell somebody in the room, write it down, even just shout it at the screen. Okay, let's have a look then. Let's see if you got it right. So that was a picture of the North Pole. Now, I know we've learned about some books, for example, The Polar Express, which talked about the North Pole. But this is the geographical North Pole. Now, the North Pole is the point that is the furthest north on planet Earth. It is the point on which the axis of the Earth turns. So you might know that this is our Earth and our Earth spins around, but it doesn't spin around perfectly like this. It's tilted and it turns around like this. So the axis is that imaginary line that goes from the center of the top of the Earth and the center of the bottom of the Earth. The North Pole has no land at all. So this is a picture that is showing you what the Earth would look like if you were looking down at the Earth from the top. So if you were in outer space and you were on top of the Earth and you looked down, you would see this. Now this is the North Pole. You can see right in the center of the Earth, and it's in the middle of the ocean. Now, if you look here, you might think that's not in the middle of the ocean. I can see that that is not the sea. But the reason it looks like land is because it's actually frozen into a very solid, thick layer of ice that is actually about 2 to 3 meters thick. So that ice is thicker than two of you stood on top of each other. It's so thick. And the reason it's so thick is because it's very, very cold there at the North Pole. And the reason why it's so cold is because the sun doesn't shine there for about half a year. And even when it doesn't rise very high. It doesn't get much direct sunlight. Now, I just want to very, very quickly show you a resource that you can use at home to have a look at this. It is eChalk, and it is an interactive globe. So if you just type into Google interactive globe, then this website will be the first one that you can click on. And what you can see is if you click on that, you can actually move the Earth around, and you can have a look at the countries and how the Earth spins on its axis. And you can see a red line that will go through it, and it will show you where the North Pole is. And then obviously the opposite one to that is the South Pole. So there you go, it's all loaded up, and you can see that this is what the Earth looks like when it's spinning. It's not spinning directly on a vertical axis, it's kind of tilted, and you can see that. So if you click on it as well, you can drag it, and you can then start to see here, this massive block of ice there. This is the North Pole. There you go. You can see the North Pole from the top of the Earth, and you can move it around, and you can even see the South Pole. So I thought that was a nice, cool little resource if you wanted to have a look at that later. So let's get back to our flip chart. On average, the North Pole is minus 40 degrees in the winter months, and that is when it's covered with the most ice. So you can see here in the winter, that is when it's the coldest, and the Arctic Ocean is the most frozen. But then in the summer, you can see that there is much less ice here, and the temperature at the North Pole is just 0 degrees, which is just about freezing. So really, it never ever gets warm there, never really gets much above 0 degrees Celsius. So now we need to have a think about what we know, and I've got some pictures there of some expeditions of people who have travelled to the North Pole. I'd like to have a think, is this a place where you would like to travel to? Or what do you think it would be like to travel to the North Pole? Maybe pause the video and shout out your ideas. Brilliant, let's carry on then, let's have a think. So Matthew Henson was an American explorer who is believed to be the first man to reach the North Pole. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn all about his journey and the challenges that he faced along the way. And maybe this will make you think about what it would be like to travel to the North Pole, those ideas that you said. You could maybe wonder whether you were right, or maybe if there's anything that even surprises you about the journey to the North Pole. So Matthew Henson was an American explorer who was believed to be the first man to reach the North Pole. In 1887, Henson met a man called Robert Peary. Peary was an explorer. This is Peary here. Peary was an explorer, and he invited Henson to work for him. They went on to travel to many places around the world over a period of 20 years. So they travelled for 20 years together all over the world. In 1893, they began a journey to Greenland to chart the entire ice cap. This took 2 years. Now, have I got a picture here? Yeah, so you can see this is the North Pole right there, and you can see that Greenland is here. So it's part of the Arctic Circle there. In Greenland, Henson embraced local Inuit culture. Now, Inuits are native people to the Arctic. They have lived in the Arctic for thousands of years, and you might have heard of them as Eskimos. They live in igloos, they have sleds and sled dogs to pull them, and they hunt and they fish for their own food. So whilst they were in Greenland, Henson embraced the local Inuit culture. That means he took it on, and as we go on to say, he learned their language and he learned their survival skills for being able to live in such a cold and harsh place. However, this expedition to Greenland almost ended in tragedy. Oh no. They ran out of food and supplies and had to survive by eating all except one of their sled dogs. Despite this near disaster, Peary and Henson and their team of men travelled back to Greenland to collect meteorite samples, because they needed them to sell them to a museum so that they could pay for more journeys to the Arctic. Over the next few years, Henson and Peary made several attempts to make it to the North Pole, but they had to turn back each time because it was too difficult. In 1902, on one of these attempts, 6 Eskimo men died due to the lack of food and supplies. In 1905, they were given a new ship by the President of America, and that allowed them to get even further than they had before. However, the melting sea ice blocked their journey, so they had to turn back again. They couldn't get there because of all the ice that was melting down and blocking their path. In 1908, the team began their final mission to the North Pole. It was their 8th attempt. Henson was crucial to the success of the trip. He built sledges and taught the other men how to use them. As the mission continued into the next year, many members of the team turned back. Despite this, Peary and Henson carried on. Peary knew that he could not do it without Henson, and Peary said, "Henson must go all the way. I can't make it there without him." And here's a little fact for you about Peary. The Arctic is so cold that on these expeditions, over the period of time that they were traveling there, Peary lost 8 of his toes to frostbite. Now, frostbite is when your toes get so cold that they no longer work anymore. On the 6th of April 1909, Peary and Henson finally reached the North Pole with just 4 Inuit men and 40 dogs. Now, they started that mission with 24 men, 19 sledges, and 133 dogs, and they ended up there with only the 6 of them and 40 dogs. It is said that Henson actually arrived at the North Pole 45 minutes before Peary did, which would make Henson the first man to reach the North Pole. Now, Henson famously said, "I think I'm the first man to sit on top of the world." So now what you've got to do is you've got to imagine that you are Matthew Henson. So you've got to put your big Eskimo coat on, wrap up ready for that cold, and you've got to think like Matthew Henson. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'd like you to pause the video and share your ideas. So my question to you, Matthew Henson, is what challenges did you face on your journey to the North Pole? Now you might want to use some of these sentence starters down here to tell me about what some of the challenges you faced on your journey to the North Pole. Well done if you've managed to have a go at thinking of some of your own ideas. Now you might have said, my journey was challenging because it was freezing. My journey was dangerous because we had to travel a long way and we only had a few supplies. You might say we didn't have enough supplies, so we had to turn back. You might have said, we had to eat our sled dogs because we ran out of supplies. You might have said, our journey was dangerous because of the sea ice blocking our path. You could have said, my journey was challenging because we got frostbite in our toes. Which actually, the reason, if we go back to this slide here, the reason it is said that Matthew Henson is supposed to have arrived there 45 minutes early was because Peary didn't have all of his toes. He was said to have moved much more slowly than Henson, and a couple of the other Inuit men powered forward and got there first. So well done if you said any of those things, and well done if you even said some of your own ideas that I didn't mention. So now you can turn back into yourself. You're no longer Matthew Henson. My question to you is, would you like to go on an expedition to the North Pole? And once again, you can use this sentence starter here. I would like to go to the North Pole because, or I wouldn't like to go to the North Pole because. Brilliant. Well done if you shared some of your ideas there. So I'm really interested to know whether you'd like to go to the North Pole or not. I think me personally, I wouldn't like to go to the North Pole because it is too cold, it is too far away, and I don't want to get frostbite. So your task for today then, all of this is available to download on the Byron Wood School website. You've got the word mats there, the sentence starters, and you've even got a version of this sheet that you can type onto. So your task is to do pretty much what we did here. You are hot seating. So you are going to write in the first person. That means using I, my, and we, okay? So you are going to write from your perspective as if you are Matthew Henson, okay? So my question to you is, what was challenging about your journey to the North Pole? You are going to write some of those ideas that you shared here. So for example, you might say, using the sentence starter, my journey was challenging because, so my journey was challenging because And let's have a think about what challenges Matthew Henson faced. So my journey was challenging because it was very cold. And think back to that word that we learned when we did the Polar Express as well. It's the North Pole is a huge ice cap. So it's not land, so nothing can grow there. It's essentially an ice desert. So you could say it was very cold and bare. You might say we had to, so now using that second sentence frame, we had to. So we had to, what did Matthew Henson have to do? Well, he had to build sledges and he had to teach the other men how to use them. They had to eat their sled dogs because they ran out of supplies. You could say we had to turn back because the sea ice blocked our path and made it too dangerous. We had to learn how to survive from the Inuit people. So lots of sentences that we could say here. I think I'm going to say we had to learn, I'll say that last one, we had to learn how to survive from the Inuit people. And I'm going to say we didn't have, I'm going to say we didn't have enough supplies. We didn't have enough supplies, so we had to eat our sled dogs. There we go. So everything I've written in the first person. I've said my journey, we had to. I could say I had to instead of we. Okay, so my journey was challenging because it was very cold and bare. We had to learn how to survive from the Inuit people. We didn't have enough supplies, so we had to eat our sled dogs. And then transform back into yourself. You can draw a little picture of yourself here and give me a sentence about whether or not you would like to travel to the North Pole. So if I think about whether I would want to travel to the North Pole, I would not like to travel to the North Pole because it is freezing cold and very dangerous. Very dangerous. There we go. But you might say that you do want to travel to the North Pole because you want to sit on top of the world like Matthew Henson, or you might want to go somewhere that very few people have gone before. Now, if writing those sentences from scratch or using the sentence starters is too difficult for you, then I have created some sentence frames for you to follow here. So we've got the, or you could say my, it's my journey. So the journey or my journey, or you could say my expedition. An expedition is just another word for a journey. So the expedition was it easy? Was it hard? Was it dangerous? Which word are you going to choose? I'm going to choose the word hard. There we go. So I'm going to say the expedition was hard. And then when I've worked out which words in my sentence I want, I'm going to write it here. I'm going to say the expedition was hard. I need a capital letter at the start of my sentence and I need a full stop at the end. When I've done my full stop, I can then go on to my next sentence. There was or there were no or lots of ice food tries. Remember tries because he had to try lots and lots of times. It was on their 8th attempt that they actually succeeded in making it to the North Pole. So I'm going to say there was lots of ice. So I need a capital letter to start my sentence. There was lots of ice, and I need a full stop at the end. And then here we've got again we or I, and we've got some verbs: ate, built, or ran out of, sled dogs, sledges, and supplies. So did they build supplies? No, they didn't. Matthew Henson or I built sledges. I ate sled dogs, we ate sled dogs, or we ran out of supplies. Lots of different sentences that you can write there. And once again, there's another sentence frame to help you answer this one as well. I would or I wouldn't like to go to the North Pole because it is freezing, it is dangerous, it is far. Don't forget you need your capital letter here and your full stop at the end. And you just write that down on a sheet of paper. Well, like I said, you can download these worksheets from the home learning section of the Byron Wood School website. Once again, well done everybody. I hope you really enjoyed learning about Matthew Henson's journey to the North Pole. And next week in history, we will learn a little bit more about Matthew Henson's life and some of the other challenges he faced, not at the North Pole, but when he returned back to America. So look forward to that one. Well done again. Bye everyone.